Trade relations between China and the United States have completely melted down, which shouldn't surprise us at all. Donald's plan to grandstand against China is failing miserably. Watch ABC News' Rachel Scott break down the newest escalation in the trade war.
Overnight, the trade war between the U.S. and China escalating as Beijing raises its tariffs on American goods to 125%, set to take effect tomorrow. Chinese President Xi Jinping saying there are no winners in a tariff war and warning going against the world will only result in self-isolation. President Trump acknowledging the headwinds, calling it a transition cost.
There'll always be transition difficulty.
The market rebounded after the announcement of his 90-day pause, but that was short-lived. Much of the gains wiped out as investors sold off after the rally. As a new estimate from the Yale Budget Lab says the new tariff system will cost households an average of $4,700 annually. With a staggering 145% tariff on Chinese goods, economists warn things could go from bad to worse if a deal isn't made.
This massive and completely unnecessary escalation marks the most aggressive and worrisome move yet in the unraveling of a trade relationship that helped shape global markets over the course of the 21st century. Economists warn the rupture could devastate both economies, slashing profits, raising prices, and sending shockwaves through supply chains that reach far beyond just the United States and China. At stake is not just trade, but economic stability and diplomatic trust built over a generation. And that last point is so incredibly important. We are not just talking about an idiot playing a game of chicken with somebody who could completely outclass him in these kinds of maneuverings vis-a-vis uh, tariffs and trade wars. We're talking about the dismantling of a generation of a relationship that is, quite frankly, central to the stability of the global markets. China is in some ways our competitor for sure, and not exactly an ally. I mean, we have many issues with the Chinese government and how they treat many of their people. But if we're just talking specifically about trade, they are one of our most significant trading partners. Americans rely far too much, actually, on Chinese goods because why? Because they're extremely inexpensive. So, slapping a 145% tariff on Chinese products is going to make many, many of those products unaffordable to most Americans. So, we are looking at the destruction of our economy, potentially the Chinese economy. We are making it easier for China to create stable and trustworthy trade alliances with other countries, elevating China as a force in the world market. They will certainly outpace us in the not too distant future. And again, in a way that will take potentially decades for us to recover from, weakening America as a leader in global trade because nobody has any reason to trust us anymore. Experts worry that countries will soon have to choose between giving their business to China or the United States, a fear that's very quickly becoming a reality. And again, at this point, why would anybody choose us? In fact, Spain is one of the first major countries with plans to form closer trade ties with China amidst uncertainty with what Donald's next move will be. Watch Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez discuss the move.
I have had the opportunity to tell the president personally about our commitment to openness, to international cooperation, to broadening our network of relations with other countries and also with other regional blocs. Spain is in favor of more balanced relations between the European Union and China, of finding negotiated solutions to our differences, which we have, and of greater cooperation in areas of common interest. I've conveyed to the president, as I've also said publicly in the media on other occasions, trade wars are not good. Nobody wins, and this is clear. The world needs both China and the United States to talk.
Yeah, but to what end? I mean, what is going to result from a conversation with President Xi and Donald Trump? Less than 2 weeks into this tariff insanity, and the US is already losing major European players. And it isn't just Spain. The European Union just agreed to start negotiations with China on electric vehicles, where it's possible that the EU will lower tariffs on China. China's president is also set to visit Vietnam, Malaysia, and Cambodia, working to build stronger trade partnerships between the countries, which are suffering from Donald's tariffs. These countries, who have for a long time now been strong U.S. trade allies, are being pushed into China's arms by us. In fact, China and Vietnam are expected to sign about 40 agreements Monday in order to bolster trade between the two countries. Donald isn't pushing business to America, he's pushing it to China. And this is where the idea of soft power comes into focus. Donald only knows how to play dominance politics, and he's not good at it because he's weak. He doesn't understand that in order to engage in dominance politics and win, you have to have a stronger hand. And he has squandered America's strength by being so reckless with his it's quite frankly insane approach to tariffs and the unilateral unprovoked trade war he decided to start for no reason that we're aware of, except again, he's insane. So, China very smartly is using its soft power to foster relationships and to fill the void left by America abandoning its former allies. Before we go further, please hit like, share this video, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We are pushing to get more subscribers. We are just at about 370,000. As independent media, your support helps us reach more people and keep this going. So not only is America losing business, we're losing jobs already promised to Americans before the tariffs. Workers in Pennsylvania are already being punished for Donald's disastrous Chinese tariffs. A planned $300 million plastics plant in Pennsylvania, which promised 300 jobs, has been scrapped due to the combined impact of the Trump regime era tariffs and federal budget cuts. The developers cited increased costs from the tariffs on raw materials such as steel and aluminum, which made the project financially unviable. This isn't just happening in Pennsylvania either. Here's ABC4 Utah on the devastating closure for Americans in Utah.
Utah Iron is shutting down mining operations in Iron County. The company cites significant fluctuations in global markets and the uncertainty that comes with that. Utah Iron says the immediate closure will impact hundreds of employees and the businesses and, of course, major transportation providers the company works with. Now, it is worth noting here, America's biggest export destinations for iron ore include Canada, China, and Germany, 3 countries heavily impacted by President Trump's tariff plan. In a statement, the company said this: while it pains us to suspend mining operations, it is a necessary step while we regroup and adjust to current market pressures.
Well done, Donald. Utah Iron is one of the Iron County's larger employers, and more than 100 employees are being affected. The news release states, quote, the company also supports many other small and large businesses locally and regionally as well as major transportation providers, railway, and sea shipping that will be impacted, unquote. So not only is Donald losing future business, he's losing business that was already promised to Pennsylvania workers and forcing Utah workers to lose their jobs. I'm pretty sure this is not what Americans intended to have happen, or I should say expected to have happen. But almost across the board, the American economy is being adversely affected, from prices to inflation to job security to the fact that new manufacturing plants aren't being built, old ones are shutting down. And that means what? That people are losing their jobs, and new jobs that people were anticipating are no longer available. We're already losing business in the United States, and U.S. consumers are starting to suffer as well. Not only are we losing business in the United States, but U.S. consumers are starting to suffer too. Chinese factories produce more than those in the United States, Germany, Japan, South Korea, and Britain combined, meaning these tariffs will have very significant repercussions for U.S. consumers. I want to break down some of the statistics on some of these products. China is a major producer of electronics in the United States, including 73% of smartphones, 78% of laptops, 87% of video game consoles. China also exports 77% of the toys coming into the United States. Chinese vendors make up about 17% of the discount e-commerce market, including fashion, toys, and other goods. Apple makes 90% of its iPhones in China, where, as I've mentioned before, over decades, they have built a vast infrastructure. iPhones, laptops, video games, toys, clothing, and undoubtedly more. Things are about to get a lot more expensive for the American consumer. And I do not know how to make sense to anybody of why this is happening. The entire venture regarding the imposition of tariffs on our trading partners, our closest trading partners, our biggest trading partners, is beyond comprehension. If you consider that the stated rationale for it is to make America a stronger presence in the global economy, to save Americans lots of money, to have trillions of dollars pouring in from tariffs. And the truth of the matter is, it's all because, well, it's because Donald's an idiot and he's insane, but it's because of a fundamental misunderstanding of what tariffs are, which anybody with a brain cell should know. Tariffs imposed by one country on exports coming in from another country are essentially taxes on the people of the country imposing the tariffs. It's not that hard to understand unless, of course, you're Donald Trump. I'm shocked that this guy knows how to tie his shoes at this point. And this isn't just a possibility, this is already reality. Dame, a woman-owned business here in the United States, is already having to add a surcharge on products, and it won't even begin to cover the new manufacturing cost. That means consumers are paying more and businesses are making less. The CEO of Dame told CNBC, quote, "I want people to understand how it impacts us. We are renegotiating again with our manufacturers. We are adjusting our logistics. We are changing our inventory," unquote. And this is the thing, like, we cannot pretend that just because the stock market had one really good day, that all of the losses and all of the harm done during the preceding 2 months were erased. People lost their jobs. People lost a lot of money. Things became unaffordable. Businesses, anticipating that the tariffs were going to continue because we were told any news to the contrary was fake, stocked up on inventory in the event that prices were going to get more expensive. So now they're stuck with excess inventory. As prices get higher, businesses have a choice. They can raise prices, potentially pricing them outside of the capacity of their consumers to buy them, or they cannot raise prices and make less money. That's basically the calculus here. Now, Donald, of course, claims that this will force companies to move manufacturing to the United States, and once manufacturing is in the United States, all of our problems will be solved. But of course, it's far more complicated than that moron can possibly comprehend. We're diving into what this proposed shift would really entail. So what exactly would it look like to move factories over to the United States? Donald has long argued that his aggressive tariffs would bring U.S. manufacturing jobs back home, boosting competition and lowering prices. Sounds great. As you can guess, of course, it's not that simple. Experts are warning that there are many things discouraging firms from setting up factories in the United States in the first place. NBC News' Yasmin Vousigian has more.
Is a manufacturing renaissance in the United States possible? And would it provide jobs that people here want?
If we mean sending us back to that world in which manufacturing was a third of U.S. employment, there's just no way that would happen.
Could we reindustrialize the economy and add millions of working class jobs? Absolutely.
Clearly plenty of disagreement. So what would it take? Let's rewind to the 1970s. Back then, nearly 20 million people in the United States made their livings from manufacturing, accounting for more than a fifth of total employment. But then globalization, starting in the 80s, NAFTA in the 90s, China joining the World Trade Organization at the turn of the century. It all shocked the system. Cheaper labor abroad meant lower prices and closed factories here.
What we call the China trade shock.
Now manufacturing employs only about 8% of the nation's workers. Many economists who study these massive trends are skeptical about the ability of tariffs to turn back time.
Donald has a fundamental misunderstanding of what it would take to bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States. The U.S. has spent decades shifting from a focus on manufacturing to a focus based in financial, intellectual capital, and tech, which has ultimately been a good thing for U.S. consumers and workers. Experts fear that in the fight for an additional 13 million manufacturing jobs, will be undermining the competitiveness of the other 140 million non-manufacturing jobs. As a result of this shift, U.S. supply chains have spread out, with certain components of popular U.S. products being manufactured across different countries post-COVID. This means that it would take an enormous amount of effort to bring manufacturing as a whole back to the United States. Additionally, this move couldn't happen overnight. Even Donald himself admits that it could take up to 2 years to see any major changes in manufacturing in the United States, and who knows how many times the tariff rates will change before then. Watch Donald's own statement.
They can build them fast, but they're still very big plants. So I'd always say it would take a year and a half to 2 years.
Great. Even beyond these logistical challenges, uncertainty surrounding Donald's erratic tariffs and constant change of policy is deterring companies from making long-term investments in the United States, because of course it is. Experts say that companies making the decision to move factories to the United States are facing tariff fears, citing that tariffs rates from Donald change almost daily and could change even further after his tenure as president. Meaning overall, the chance of moving to the United States being a bad investment is quite high. And, maybe that was the rationale for the tariff debacle in the first place. Impose tariffs, create incentives over time, but that requires patience, it requires nuance, and, obviously, it requires understanding what you're doing, which he does not. Also, as is very clear, it may not be the best thing for the future of the United States to do what the fascist regime constantly wants us to do: go backwards. We've come up with a solution that works, and the way forward would have been to continue to work with our trading partners to make a future that is more sustainable and better for the workers, yes, of the United States, but for everybody on the planet as well. But these guys, Donald Trump, his fascist regime, they don't care about that at all. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating, because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.